The purpose for our book selection is immigration. I looked up the standard for our third grade class, and it's 3.4, and it says students understand the role of rules and laws in our daily lives and basic structure of U.S. government, with an emphasis on knowing the important local and national landmarks. I thought that we would focus on the Statue of Liberty, which is great because at Kathy Binks Elementary, they are in the Fontana Unified School District. They're in a very low SES neighborhood. Their school is 85% Hispanic, and 86% of the students that go to that school are low income students. And I just felt like this was a great topic because in this political climate that we live in today, it is important to explain why how America has very strong immigrant roots and diversity, and how that makes this country like a beautiful place. So all of the texts that we chose based on the responsive dot survey or the responsive dot guide, they all support literacy skills. They all avoid perfunctory or tokenistic representations of cultures. They support content's interest and knowledge of the target audience. The authors have been proven to be culturally reliable sources. The content is culturally, authentically, and linguistically based. These books fall in the National Ring of Culture, which states that the national culture shapes things you do because the country where you were born or where you live. So, for example, if you are from Canada, one aspect of your national culture is the way you celebrate Thanksgiving on the second Monday of October. So all of these books do have that national ring of culture element to them. The texts have both surface level and shallow levels of cultural behavior. And a lot of the indigenous homes of the characters in these books are portrayed in all of the texts. And all texts legitimize deep cultural behaviors. So the first book that I chose is All the Way to America. And this book is the story of one family leaving Italy and coming to America because they were really poor in Italy and they wanted a better life for themselves. It talks about the difficulties that immigrants faced when they came to America, about how they had to about how some changed their names so they acclimated better with our culture. And this particular family ends up starting a family restaurant, and the main character of the story has a very large family, and the center of their family is this family restaurant. So it's a very sweet story about the American dream coming to America for a better life. These are the questions that I developed for this text that I would ask my students. I say, why do some people need to leave their home countries? Why do some immigrants change their names when they arrive? Why is it necessary for some children to not go to school? How can families have opportunities by coming to America? And how was this family better after coming to America? My next choice is The Journey. And this is a story about a mother fleeing a war-stricken country. In the story, war breaks out in their country and their father dies, and the mother has to then take her children to a different place, a safer place. It doesn't really specify what country they're from or what country they're going to, but along the way there's many trials that they face trying to come to the border, and at the border they're actually turned away, and then it shows like alternative methods into getting into a country, all just so that her and her children could have a safe place to live. And the questions that I constructed for this text is, how can war change families? What issues can occur while migrating to a new land? Why do you think people go through all that trouble to come to a new land? How hard would it be to leave your life behind? And why do you think the people at the border did not want the family to cross? My third book that I chose is Here I Am. And this is a very inspirational book. This book is nearly wordless, so it brings that element of visual literacy into the unit. And this book tells the story of a boy who moves to a city from far away. And he struggles with adapting to the languages and the sounds of a big city and trying to acclimate to like the new people and new cultures around him. Ultimately, he does make new friends and he ends up adapting to his local environment, which is positive, but it also does show those struggles along the way. I thought the imagery in this book was really powerful. I really enjoyed this book. And the questions I constructed for this is, what would be the hardest part of moving to a new country? How would you communicate in a place that spoke a different language? How would you make new friends? What would be different in your new home? What would be the same? And by asking what would be different, what would be the same is trying to show like, even though you're moving to a new place, maybe you find similarities in like people or maybe some similarities in food. But, no matter where you go, you can always find something similar, I think. And lastly is The Migrant. And this is a story about seasonal migration of Mennonites in Mexico. So it just shows this girl, and the metaphors in this book are just so beautiful. She compares herself to a bird. She wonders what it would be like to be a tree, which I thought was really powerful, especially from being a migrant farmer and moving from place to place seasonally. You really just long for those roots. It talks about how living in a migrant family can be difficult and how sharing what minimal luxuries, it talks about her and her sisters sharing a blanket and like how she feels safe in that blanket with her sisters. And it just really shows like all of the things that we kind of take for granted. And it also gives us insight into how these migrant farmers adapt to the places that they work in. So I thought this book tied in really well with our immigration unit. And the questions for this text are, how would you feel if you had to keep moving? In what ways can you relate to Anna? Why does Anna want to know what it is like to be a tree? Why does Anna feel like a bird? Based on this story, what do you think migrant means? And that is just kind of like tapping into this, like new vocabulary, testing students or having students use what they hear or read in the story to kind of tie in what that new vocabulary word might mean. So overall, I felt that these 4 books were very good representations of immigration to any country, really. It doesn't have to be in America. And I think based on our current situation, that is really relevant. And I think that students, especially in the Fontana Unified School District, could benefit from having a lesson on immigration.